Hello, this is R Rats with Team 4545 League, analyzing the game between H-Cube and Packer Fan. This game was played in Team Event 53 in the under 1800s section, round 3. Let's have a look, see what happens. And it's the Schliemann defense, the Roy Lopez, and I just had a Schliemann the other day. And wouldn't you know, White played the same move here, D3. It doesn't challenge the main theory of the Schliemann. It's perfectly sound. It's not the most aggressive. I can understand anybody playing it if they don't really know the Schliemann. It leads to at least an even game, as I say, and there's nothing at all wrong with it. If White's well prepared to meet the Schliemann, he can actually come out okay with it. But you got to be prepared because it's a tricky opening. Okay. So, and I don't know theory on it. It seems to me that White can just probably castle here and not worry about dropping e4 because all the center lines that open up. But anyway, just both sides continue with their development. And I don't know, again, when book ends. This has the idea of threatening to play knight d5 and to mess up the black pawns a little bit, although that just basically ends up weakening the black king side a little bit. If it does happen, it's not certain that it's something that White's going to be able to exploit yet. He doesn't have his development complete yet, but the ambition is there, and it's certainly worth something. And so White decides at this point to part with the bishop pair just to get the queen to get the knight into a good square, d5, and that's a versatile square for the knight. We all know that. And since black had a threat to deal with, at queen c7, he brings his queen back. Now it looks like White's gained something here, but really, what has he gained? Okay, first off, the game is even. I know that White's team is down one game and needs a win to even the matchup. And black, of course, is happy to draw this game. And so one way to look at things too is, just a rule of thumb. We know that win with White, draw with black. That's the ideal for both teams, but both teams can't do that, especially when they're meeting here. And often the worst case scenario is if you lose with White, because then you didn't even get a draw. You didn't not only fail to get the win, you didn't get the draw. And so what does White have here to justify playing for a win? Well, he's got this wonderful centralized knight on d5, and that's what he has. He has some weak squares to play against on the king side. Okay, and for the most part, those squares are not accessible right now. White would love to play queen h5 check here, but he can't. His knight's in the way, so how is he going to get around that? Okay, now just looking at this position, one way to try to do it is with brutality and play knight takes e5. Is that feasible? All right, it's something we have to consider. Knight takes e5. If we do take it, black takes back on d5, and we get queen h5 check in. But do we have enough? That's the question. So let's just take a look. Okay, let's just take a look and see. Now, if black does nothing here, then White's just won a pawn, right? So black is almost obligated to accept this sacrifice, right? Okay, now comes queen h5 check. Now what does black do? Well, he's going to have to move his king. Where does he want to put it? He has f8, he has d7, and on d7, White's just got all kinds of possibilities to attack black with. Rook d1, which threatens some embarrassing discoveries. So let's just take a look at king f8 and see what we have. Okay, wow, White's got some potential here. f4, no, he can't play f4 now. There's a pin. Do you see it? Okay, but with king h1, then f4 becomes a potent threat. Now black has chances to defend this position. It's certainly not winning for White. White has gambited a whole piece to get this position, but look what he has in return. He has attacking chances. And Not sure how tactical a player white is and how tactical a player black is, but if one of them is advanced in it and or short in it, it can be to their advantage or disadvantage here in a hurry. So white did have a sacrifice at his disposal just to displace the black king, and now the question is, what can he do to follow up? And that's what happens in sacrifices. You don't always have a clear outcome in mind. You just know that you have some pressure and you go from that. Now, what other logical moves does white have in this position? White could try knight e3. Okay, and what's the point of knight e3? Well, there's a lot of points to it. Okay, first off, if black wants to take, it just brings white's rook right into the game with check, right? And so black's probably not going to want to do that. It opens up a file to go after the queen, and it prepares to bring the knight into maybe a new square that can be useful, and it gives white a chance to bring his bishop back to c4. Now, black probably has a resource for all those, and who knows, black may be winning this, but sometimes you got to go for broke here and give it a try. But ideally, black will like to play queen e8 at some point and chase the queen out. So any move that white comes up with, black comes up with, white's going to have to deal with it and just play a piece down. But black is certainly going to have his hands full defending this position for a while. So a careful player with black could probably win this. A careful player with white could probably win this too. And to some degree, it comes down to player imagination and a little bit of luck. But anyway, white didn't play it. Let's go back and just see what white did do. And what white did was play knight d2. Now this has the same thing in mind. It wants to check on h5, but black has time to deal with it. It didn't come with a brutal move such as knight takes e5. So now black just negates the queen h5 check and castles because he has time. He didn't drop a pawn, and then white goes around with his knight to chase the bishop. Now what white's saying is he wants his bishop back, and I think after he does this, I think the position is now basically dead even, and black even has maybe the better game here. Okay, why do I say black has the better game? Okay, first off, even though he has double pawns, he has an open A file. Next, if you look at the bishops, 6 of black's 7 pawns are on the opposite color of black's bishop, and white has 1 pawn which is blocked on e4 on the color of his bishop. That interferes with its mobility. So probably what white would like to do here is trade bishops if he can, and then just hold on. Black's half-open F file looks a little more inviting than white's half-open D file. So I'd say at this point, black's a little better. Okay, so let's just move on. And now comes the check. And I think black wisely didn't play bishop e6 because he's got a good bishop. He should just try to keep it on the board. And I think this starts to be where white loses drift of the game. And as I said, the position was already slightly in black's favor, and this is going to do two things. It's going to give white an isolated pawn on e4 at some point, and it's going to give black an ideal blockading square, e5, which he didn't have at his disposal before. So probably what white could do is just play f3 if he's concerned about that e4 pawn, play f3 and e3, or I'm sorry, a3, I'm trying to point to it, a3, put a rook on d1 and offer a draw, and let the teammates try to come up with the win to get the team back in contention, because white really doesn't have anything in here to justify trying for a win. And logically, I don't know the player's true strengths, but you've got about 100-point rating disadvantage, and black should be happy with a draw. If he wants to play for a win, white shouldn't lose. He can play this carefully and come out okay. But f4 is just too ambitious. White doesn't have enough going in his position to justify it. The knight on b3 is just not in play at all. I mean, where's it going? It's going to take a while to get it back in play. Knight to c1, where's it going next? e2 or d3? Then where? And if you move the queen, where are you going to put the queen so you can clear d2 for the knight? So f4 just starts white on a downward a downward spiral here. And like I say, here comes knight e5, and that's just a tremendous square to have. And that knight just dominates the bishop. And black follows a logical plan here. He redeploys to attack e4. That might be what white should do, is get the queen off the pressure on e4, play rook takes rook check, and then rook f1, attack the rook. I'm sorry, attack the queen, but then he's got to deal with this pawn on a3, and he's still got his isolated pawn here. I'm just looking for an alternative plan. But he played a3 first, and I guess white didn't see what was coming. He now has his chance to play rook takes f8 check. If he does that, black retakes with the queen, and then rook f1, and e4 is still a problem. It's hanging, and what does black do? He just gets ready to continue the assault on it, I guess. Queen e7, and now once the knight moves, it's under attack, and it's not even defended. So white has to stop and defend his pawn. Maybe queen e3, and then you're getting ready for knight d2 to defend it. But then white's on the defensive. Here's saying white is defending. Why do you want to defend with white? You want to attack with white. Well, why did white have to defend here? Because he created a weakness in his position, and black is exploiting it. That's why white is making defensive moves. Okay, so let's go forward. He played knight d4, which might be a little ambitious, trying to get rid of the bishop. Now, how much time did he spend on it? He spent about 4 minutes on it, 3-4 minutes. But black has just a good resource here, and attack the trade rooks now, and then stop and attack the queen. And that was something that white should have been trying to do to get his rook into play. And now the queen's under attack, and there's a double attack on e4, and white can't deal with it. And so comes the isolated pawn, and white is basically left with a lost ending. He's down a pawn, and he's on the defensive. Now it's not lost yet, but it's kind of headed that way. When you're down a pawn, the main thing to try to strive for is a rook endgame. Get the minor pieces off. If you can get into rook ending, that's your best chance for a draw. And black just conducts the game well after this. It's okay to trade the bishops now, and white obliges. It's going to be hard to try to criticize white for anything. I think he did the best he could here. It's really not feasible how he's going to trade knights. And okay, now c6, and looks like a nice square to have the knight, but black just has a solid game and is just consolidating his position to get the win. Maybe instead of g3, well, g3 takes away squares from black's knight, but white needs to get his king active since black's king isn't. And I don't know, the knight wasn't really under attack. Why not just leave it there? But anyway, and it goes back. And white says, do you want to draw? Black says, no, I'll find a different move. And he chases the rook. And I think rook e7 was played here. You don't really want to trade rooks, and I'll show you why in just a second. You need to keep the rook on and try to trade knights. Where do you put the rook? Well, if anything, stick it on e3. If anything, stick it there. E1 if you have to. And I'll show you why you don't want to trade rooks. Okay, a general rule, it's not 100% every time, but a general rule on who's winning a knight ending. Okay, real simple. Let's just imagine the knights are off the board in this position. Who wins? Well, black's a pawn ahead. You would think black would win the king and pawn ending. And I'm not going to prove that black wins the king and pawn ending, but it sure looks like it to me. Okay, so if you trade knights, you can lose the king and pawn ending. You don't want to trade knights, or you don't want to go into a knight ending. So especially here, you don't want to trade knights because you'll lose the king and pawn ending. But the problem is, see, since knights can't lose tempos like rooks and bishops and queens can, eventually black will force something where he breaks through, simply because, and he does it with the principle that one would with a king and pawn ending. And the difference is you have a knight doing a little bit of maneuvering here and there in addition to everything else that you're doing. So essentially black is winning now, and it's I would say is decisive. And the more pawns that come off, I think it just helps black. Eventually he's going to get a passed pawn here, and that just pretty much spells curtains. But he would have forced one in eventually, but maybe white could have defended a little differently. Try, get that king activated, and it has a chance. But from here on in, black just plays it very well, and knight c5 is just such a useful move. It secures the pawn on b7, and it keeps the knight and the pawn are keeping the king out from advancing, and the black king is ready to step in. Maybe what white needs to play here is king f3. That can limit the black king from getting maybe some good mobility. But the black king will just go to e5, and eventually d3 will be played, but with the idea of going there. But then white can cover here. A queen at king f3 might be a stubborn defense. I guess white missed it. Now king d2 is just passive, and white's kind of playing passive here, and now his pieces are just getting backed up. So there was a chance maybe to make it tougher with what I said, but he didn't do it. Now that pawn is just too dangerous. It's going to queen and cost white the game. And here there's no point in going any further. Very good game by black. White, you were certainly in it. I don't know how sound knight takes e5 was. I don't know if you considered it, but it's now something for you to look at and see what you think. It certainly would have led to some interesting chess. Okay, I thank everyone for their time, and we'll look forward to making another video for you real soon. Take care. Bye now.